This is a Civilization 6 gameplay video, but the content is about Civ 7. Wild times we are living in. Take a look at this. The developers of Civilization have popped off and made their own turn-based studio with some exciting news. But also Civ 7 rumours and Roundup. There's a lot to cover. Sid Meier's himself, in fact, had a birthday. Happy birthday, you old chap. Soon to be 68 years old. And when I was looking that up, I noticed this game. Where can I get Sid Meier's Sim Golf? Either way, if you like Civ 7 Roundups, then do consider playing some Sim Golf, liking and subscribing to the channel. And without any further ado, let's jump in and talk about all of the recent Civilization 7 news, as well as the news that I just showed you coming out from in and around it, because there's some pretty exciting stuff in the space. My name's JumboPixel. Let's jump in. First up, if you're not aware, Civilization, the franchise, is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And there was a recent article, I'll post it on the screen here so you can see it, Civilization's Past and Future as told by its lead designers, where basically 4 designers sat down with, I think it was PC Gamer, and talked through their thoughts about where the franchise has been, where it's going, and how it needs to develop and move forward. They made particular mention of things like Humankind game, the first direct competitor to Civilization, but also loads of other mentions across the sort of network and genre. Paradox got a lot of mentions as well, with things like Crusader Kings 3 being equal competitors. What we heard about Civilization 7 is unfortunately still not a concrete release date, trailer, or review, so if you're looking for anything like that, I can't deliver. What I can give you though, firstly, and I think this is the most important piece of news, and it doesn't actually even directly relate to Civilization 7 itself, it's the fact that those Civilization devs broke away and made their own studio. This one right here. So get this, a group of former Firaxis developers, who have developed Civilization, obviously, have just announced a new studio called BitReactor. They've said that they'll focus on, quote, sort of turn-based tactics games that the founders are known for. Founders of XCOM, Civilization, right? High-end production values, riveting storytelling, and innovative design are the 3 sort of pillars that they're going for. And I think this is really exciting. Really exciting because it's extra competition in the space. But also we know more, actually, because maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 days after this announcement dropped online, I was following it on Twitter, we then heard about this. It looks like we're getting sort of an XCOM Star Wars game. 3 new Star Wars games are coming out, as you can see, developed by Respawn and EA. And BitReactor, the new company, said, hey, we're doing one of those. Maybe we're getting Star Wars XCOM. Either way, I'll put that to one side. Let's move now a little bit closer to Civ dev discussion and Civilization news. Now, it's important, though, to just frame this in the context of what is actually going on at Firaxis at the moment, the studio behind Civ 7. First up, if you're looking for a job, looks like they are hiring like there's no tomorrow. Look at all of these job listings. Every time I go to look at this list, it gets larger. Everything from environmental artists, graphics, programmers, online services engineers, and associate producers. If you're looking for a job in the industry, maybe you should give Firaxis a holler. It looks to me like the reporting could very much be right. Civilization 7 could be underway. PC Gamer and similar franchises have been talking about it for a long time. And fair enough too. But on the flip side, at Firaxis, they're doing other things as well. Of course, they're an XCOM studio, and we know this as well. Their new Marvel game, Midnight Suns, right? This sort of Marvel XCOM that's in development. And also, it's important to note, has been delayed. Because, of course, all of this, good or bad, is going on in the current backdrop that we live in the current global climate, where things maybe, in a YouTube algorithm-friendly way, slightly more prone to slowing down, shall we say. However, the recent article that I teased at the start of the video, that interviewed developers from all different walks of Civilization to sort of celebrate its 30th anniversary, right? We had Soren, the Civ 4 dev, right the way through to people still working on the game to this day, really gave some interesting and sometimes frustratingly vague and somewhat disappointing insights. Either way, it is very interesting. Let me delve into my highlights now as we look forward to what Civilization 7 could hold. Context, it was a really interesting read where 4 developers from Civilization's history, one of them, Beach, still working on it to this day, reflected on some questions that they were primed on, from their favourite element of the series to something that the series should improve on, to its highlights, to its lowlights. A really fascinating and pretty easy read. Here are the highlights that I picked out, and the reason why I've selected them is not because it's Soren Johnson talking about how great Civ 4 was again and again, but because it's something that I thought would relate to Civilization 7's development, which is why I've focused in particular on the people who are, or the person who is, still working on the game and is likely to be developing Civilization 7. First up, twist on something that they sort of didn't like or that they'd want to be better. And I thought that Beach made a really interesting point. We feel like the adjacency bonuses probably got a little overcomplicated several expansions in, he says. And some civilizations had lists of what their bonuses could be that got too long. So, he goes on to say, I don't think we've perfected that formula. Some things lead to a little bit too much micromanagement, too many clicks are required. So trade routes. You have to renew them quite often. So we've looked really hard at Civ 6 and poked at it. And we're trying to do that sort of self-assessment pretty often around here. Stringer also made an interesting point on that as well, who also worked on Civilization 6. He said that trade routes, actually, some nuances that he either had tried and didn't get in, or tried to get in but failed. One that I really liked in particular, he mentioned that he was, quote, enamored with the idea that trade routes should actually carry resources. So, a trade route going from London to Paris, you'd actually put iron and horses on it. A way to use an extra luxury. And when I was reading this and thinking about it, I was thinking, yeah, that's really interesting, and you could, really involve the role of barbarians or neutral tribes and other factions or whatever. Really fascinating stuff. Something that we should be thinking about when Civilization 7 comes out, because clearly the developers are thinking about it. But that's not all they're thinking about. Primed on their favourite features, ones they are most proud of and most looking forward to perhaps building on in future. Beach said that he really liked the way that Civilization 6 emphasised that every tile on the map had use or significance to you, as he put it. Either it's a great choke point to hold off enemies, a strategic resource, mountains, an adjacency bonus, or a spot with the right conditions to build a wonder. And I have to agree, and when you look at the map here, even in the game, you can see it play out. Every single tile, except for the ocean, but that's a different issue to unpack, is largely either valuable or directly adjacent to value. Stringer went on to say that even though it was a minor feature, the addition in the Civilization 6 Rise and Fall DLC of the historic moment system, when you make your first boat or build your first holy site or whatever, illustrated moments that were very cool to the player and added value on a timeline. And yeah, I totally agree. Personally, and this video is not about my personal opinion, but I do think that sometimes these features can lead to sort of gamification and tweaking, and the player making decisions they wouldn't sort of normally do and maybe shouldn't do just to meet those things within a time. But I also agree, really fun to celebrate achievements. Speaking of achievements, the next thing that they were sort of quizzed on a little bit was, what is Civ in 2022? Where does it stand in the strategy world? Is it king? I won't bother showing you the quotes for this one, but it's important to note that even people who weren't still working on the game acknowledged that Civ was really the kingpin. There are lots of competitors coming up, and Civ, quote, Schaefer, has its rough edges, but it is still the kingpin, the quote Johnson, Saturday Night Live of strategy games. However, where this gets particularly interesting is right towards the end of the article, a section called Alternate Worlds. Beach is still at Firaxis and still attached to the franchise, it's important to note. The rest of them are not, so no holds barred. They were asked, if given complete freedom, what kind of game would they make? And all of their answers are really interesting, and maybe I could unpack them a little bit in another video if that's something you'd like to see. Do let me know. But who I really want to look at here, obviously, I want to look at, in particular, Beach and Schaefer, but especially Beach because Beach is still working on the game. So, Beach, what do you want to put into Civilization 7 in an ideal world? Well, it's actually a common theme throughout the article. Beach says, part of why it's important to me, the franchise, is it's encouraged me to grow as a person and a global citizen, someone who understands history. It's very powerful how the game represents different cultures. On the other hand, I'm very much a strategy gamer. So, I love the game as well. Tactical, puzzles, military campaigns, etc. What we need to glean out of this in particular is a theme that runs through the rest of the article, and that's a theme of acknowledging different histories and cultures that haven't been acknowledged to date. They mentioned earlier about how there are certain players these days who are playing Civ 5 and 6 who have never been represented in an earlier Civ game like 2 and 3. And so there's a load of new discovery and ideas and expressions that can be brought into the game, and I think we should expect that in Civ 7. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.